Speaking of trusting prices domestically, our markets have certainly been volatile over the past several months. We're going to check in. Our friend Carl Setzer from AgBIZ is joining us. And Carl, it really seems as though the market's watching both weather and also anticipating what might be coming on next week's reports from the USDA with regard to acreage and quarterly grain stocks. Let's talk the corn market. Carl, basis is stepping back a little bit. What's happening out in the countryside on the cash market?
Yeah, Mike, we're sitting here watching this really close, and this really has become more of a focal point. Looking at what we have for corn inventory out here, starting to get a little bit of a feel that maybe farmers had a little more squirreled away out here in the bins than what we thought. We've seen a constant trickle of inventory come into this cash market, really all winter, and picked up a little bit in the spring, shut down for planting season, which is understandable, and starting to see a little bit heavier movement again, taking that as a bit of an indication that, yes, we had, number one, maybe a little bit more inventory stored on the farm than we thought. Number two, maybe these crops look a little better than we thought. Historically, a farmer is a little bit heavier on the sell side of his old crop inventory, the better his new crop looks once it starts growing.
Well, let's talk about that new crop. It is growing out in the fields. We're getting forecast updates each and every day, and whenever they include rain for the Corn Belt, we see a broad-based sell-off, particularly in the grains. Carl, what are you watching for downside risk here ahead of next week's USDA reports?
Where we're sitting here in this market right now, Mike, we do have considerable downside risk short term. We had a lot of weather premium built into this market. To see some of that pulled back out, not a surprise at all. Long term, however, you got to come back to the realization that when we look at balance sheets from the latest WASDE report, a 3% stocks to use ratio on soybeans, corn, 9%, and going forward, those don't get any better for new crop. Matter of fact, for soybeans, it holds steady. 3% stocks to use on soybeans, and anything remotely close to 7 to 9% on corn, you're going to see price rationing. Downside risk long term limited. Short term, I think we see a little bit, as like I said, we see this weather pulled out. We've also seen a big shift in the market. South America dominates trade right now. We know that. Our exports have slowed off a little bit. Corn fell behind that robust number that we saw here in the June WASDE. I don't think we see it altered too much going forward, but we're getting to that time of the year where we just don't have a lot of demand to drive us higher. Give us another 60 to 90 days. I expect that to change once South America starts to run out of their new crop supplies they're putting into the global market.
That makes sense. South America pulls back on their global market. We continue to see domestic demand stay strong. Carl, the ethanol business continues to produce. We're up substantially week over week and year over year in ethanol. The bids just keep coming out there in farm country. What's your take on ethanol looking forward?
Pretty optimistic. We sit here and look at ethanol, and you got to look at not just what we're using domestically as we see travel get back to normal levels, but let's take that again and take that globally. Look at what's happening down in South America. We know that their corn crop is down from last year. It's down from our early estimates. Going to likely fall in that 90 to 95 million metric tons in there somehow. Looking at their sugarcane crop, that's going to be down this year. There's their two main stocks for ethanol. Brazil has a higher ethanol blend rate, about 28% blending into the fuel. We start to see either that scaled back a little bit, or, Brazil looks at maybe importing some ethanol. At the very least, Brazil quits exporting ethanol, drives a little bit more demand to the United States, and all of a sudden we have domestic demand, we have more global demand. I think ethanol looks pretty good going forward, Mike.
All right, we'll be back for more with Carl Setzer when we return.